Well, this is the final video lecture I'm going to be sending you. At least it's the final full one. I might have to send you a couple short little things just to kind of explain the exam. I might even show you some answers. I usually base this on class behavior, but I can't do that this time. So we'll see what I can do within my bounds when the time comes. There's also a process reflection that's coming up. I'll explain all that. That one's really simple. But those are going to be just short little blasts, maybe 4 or 5 minutes a piece. This is the final full lesson that will be expected to at least be part of that final project of yours. You've been working on it. You're you've worked through the proposal in many ways, and now you're turning your attention to the final product. A lot of you are in a good place in terms of you've done a good draft or you've produced a really strong outline. Some of you still have work to do, but it is what it is. We can't change that. It's been busy for us all. I'm going to try to get you feedback as quickly as I can here and as deeply as I can. I want you to be in a really good place so that over the next week and a half or so, you can take this draft and make it into something that you're really happy with and, dare I say, proud of at the end. And one of the things that we've hinted at throughout this semester, I've talked about multimodality a lot. Today is where we bring that in because I think it's going to give you a few more options for presenting your information and developing it. But this doesn't mean that you can just drop in videos and memes and whatever haphazardly. They have to do something. They have to add something that you can't do through writing. And for some of you, this might be a really effective way to get your information across, so long as you can integrate them well. Some of you might not want to do this or might not feel comfortable doing this. It's not like you're going to lose marks because you don't, but you're going to have to work harder in other ways to get that information across. What I want to do here in the next 15 minutes or so is just highlight certain pathways that are available to you to help you to find maybe a little bit more dexterity in your writing and the way you communicate information. One of the big things that we are going to focus on here in this lecture, and I'm going to probably say it multiple times, is multimodality. So multimodality is trying to target the ways that we're now communicating in different ways. If you think of how much communication you do in everyday life, I'm not just talking about oral communication and talking and ordering pizzas or whatever the heck you guys are doing now. I'm sure skip the dishes is a staple. I'm not talking about that. I'm instead talking about all the things that we consume. We consume a lot of writing and a lot of texts every single day. Whether that's our TV shows, our podcasts, GIFs, memes, YouTube clips, songs, sound clips, podcasts, they all fit. Movies, yes, but at the same time, you're not going to drop a full movie into your paper, at least I hope not. You can recommend me a movie, you can give me a clip from the movie, do not send me the whole movie. But writing is increasingly becoming multimodal. The way that we're thinking about text has changed fundamentally. What this has allowed us to do is given us multiple pathways to communicate information and to disseminate that information, to spread it across multiple avenues, to get different audiences to understand our work. We build knowledge today in ways that we couldn't even 15 years ago. I remember even talking about this whole online enterprise when it first started, this whole we're moving online for the rest of the semester. We couldn't do this even 10 years ago, not to this degree. 15 years ago, things would just shut down. We couldn't handle this. Today, we have so many resources. Like this screen grab alone, as boring as it might be for you to listen to me virtually, probably worse than in person, which is saying a lot. It's still way better than me just dropping a PowerPoint in there and hoping for the best. At least this opens up pathways for conversation. It's not great. It's just the way that we can communicate. Ultimately, we have multiple ways of not only communicating meaning, but creating meaning. If you think of memes, we're taking a product that's already existed, we're building it into something new, and then that's communicating something to people to either make them laugh, to consider something political or social, and it's bringing them into a different headspace than they could have ever done previously. Ultimately, the notion of what a page is shifts. So your reports, your final products, don't necessarily have to follow that template exclusively. You can bring in figures, make sure to label them, but the notion of text and page and the way that you're positioning things changes completely. And this last point about situating yourself ontologically and epistemologically, don't worry about the technical term. Ultimately, this is a really convoluted way of saying the way we see the world and the way we communicate knowledge in the world is shifting big time. And the way that we see the world personally and as a society allows us to communicate in certain ways. And you do this in your paper. You are communicating something to somebody from a specific lens, and it's informed by your beliefs, it's informed by your research, it's informed by your experiences. And we are trying to situate ourselves so that we can communicate this in the best way possible. That doesn't always mean only writing. The notion of college reading and writing in general is not just communicating through a paper. This isn't your Shakespeare paper. This isn't a Beowulf paper. It's not anything that you did in high school. This is a new way of just communicating in the best way that you can. And that can involve multiple different texts, quote unquote. I did the air quotes, but that was totally useless because you can't see that anyway. Think of yourself when you're writing your paper as somebody who's telling a story. It's a little more rigid than a normal story necessarily, but from the beginning of the semester I've said your paper should be very much like we're sitting around having a coffee, enjoying a bowl of something, soup or whatever, having a beer, whatever. It should be organic, like we are having a logical debate about something. The storytelling shifts a little bit if you have multiple resources, right? The way that you can bring in podcast clips or sound clips or videos or whatever, that can change the way you tell the story. If you think back to the technical reports that we went through a couple weeks ago in our first online video, review that if you don't remember what I'm talking about or don't know what I'm talking about, you'll remember that a couple of those reports allowed us to see videos and images and all those things in a fundamentally different way that actually helped the reports to be a little bit more dynamic. Digital representations are actually allowing us to fuse cultures too, and you're going to have a lot of this. Different ways of thinking can combine. I'm just thinking the growth of things like anime in the Western world, like that was such a different thing 30 years ago or even 10 years ago. Nintendo, they've been making the same thing for years and years and years, and it's a formula that works so well for them. But they're combining cultures through different ways of presenting information and storytelling. K-pop, same thing. We're taking a concept that's now moving into the Western world that's been popular elsewhere for a long time. It's just the fusion that's happening because of the way the information is communicated to us is allowing so many different ways of engaging with material. My wife used to watch this show called Jane the Virgin. It's like a spoof on telenovelas, but it's quite engaging actually, in the sense that it's a spoof. It's ironic in a lot of ways, but it brings two cultures together to present it to a whole new audience. And you can do that in terms of bringing in different types of ways to present information in your paper that are going to let me engage with it in a totally different way. And I'm super excited to see what some of you guys can do with this. That being said, you can't just throw anything in. You kind of have to assume a few things and ensure that there are elements in place that allow this to be not only a strong multimodal element, but something that's effective in its way. Like it has to be able to do something that writing cannot. The first thing, though, to remember is that not everybody's going to read your work in full. I'm paid to do that, obviously. But even at that, retaining information sometimes comes best when there's writing mixed in with an image or whatever, or a graph, or a chart, or a video. We consume the document in different ways, and we actually retain more when we have multiple ways of looking at the information. Just apply that to yourself for a second. Keep it short. I don't want to see a 35-minute video clip from YouTube. Our first lecture was that long, way too long. It gets annoying, gets boring, and I'm not investing that kind of time into learning a concept that should be very simple. So keep it short. If you need to, direct me to a specific time in the video and I can watch that specific space. People have done that in the past. You can even hyperlink that into your work if you're comfortable doing that. You need to understand the overview, the background, the objective, and the scope, as in you need to understand why you're putting that in there in the first place. What's it doing that your writing cannot do? What's it adding to my knowledge? It has to be consistent in the sense that you can't just drop an image in and expect me to understand it. You have to fit it with your analysis. Make it focused in the sense that it does fit not only with your analysis for that paragraph, but with the overarching idea. I've had people in the past drop in, say even a meme, and you're like, why is this there? Or they give me a song as like a background or backdrop, which is great, but I'm like, what's the song doing other than you like the song? If it helps your discussion, by all means put it in. But if not, step back and wonder why. It has to support your argument in the sense that you can't be talking about one thing and the visual takes you in a whole different direction. Like it has to be consistent. And ultimately, is it doing something that the writing can't do? I've mentioned that many times here. Multimodality is not about being cool or about putting, video clips and memes and GIFs into your paper. It's about being able to communicate something in a different way. It's not the core part of your discussion, but I'm totally okay if you bring it in. I have 2 case studies. They're going to be linked here in the clip so that you can go back and you can click on them if you need to. I'm going to leave the show for a second, and I'm actually going to show you 2 of those clips just to show you one that didn't work well and another one that works a little bit better and fulfills a lot of the criteria that we just discussed. Okay? So both of these clips are things that are pretty publicly oriented. They're both on YouTube. The first is a clip from Andrew Scheer, he's still current conservative leader. This is when he was introducing himself to people. I bring this up not as a political thing, but rather as an example of things that can go wrong. Like if your multimodal elements don't work well, then things can go horribly wrong. And this is what happened with this clip. The Conservative Party wanted to introduce themselves to the public. And this video was ridiculed so badly that they took it down pretty quickly. So here's the video. I would typically show it a couple of times in class and get you guys to poll, but we can't do that. So you can kind of reverse and watch it again if you want. This is super awkward. Extremely awkward. So I'll let you watch it. I'll play the video here, and then I will unpack a little bit of it and why it didn't work, especially based on the criteria that I presented previously. Okay?
Hi, I'm Andrew Scheer, the new leader of Canada's Conservatives. Hey, Andrew. Hi. Guys. I know what it's like growing up in a family that had to make sacrifices. But with hard work and responsible choices, my parents still gave us a good life.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey. Conservatives want to see every Canadian succeed and prosper. So the other guys can take their cues from the cocktail circuits and celebrities. I'll take mine from the grocery stores and the soccer fields. That's who I am. That's who I'm fighting for.
I'm going to back this up just briefly. There we go. You can go back and watch it again. It's not a good video. Their message was trying to be, he's the people's person. He is going to understand the little guy. It's a direct opposition to Justin Trudeau. There's no cocktail parties. This guy's worked his way up. All of those things. It's about being a middle-class advocate, presenting yourself in a different way. At the time that he was brought on, the Conservatives had had a lot of bad press just in terms of the way Stephen Harper had gone out. They kind of overstayed their welcome in a sense, and that became a little bit problematic. This video did not work. It was well intentioned. The script was actually quite well written. But there's so many paradoxes. The first, if you didn't see it, go back and watch. Almost everybody's white, except for one human being. The Conservatives have had problems with diversity for a long time. It's something that voters have been known to care about in some capacity. And this video just didn't do it. So they're trying to present a new face, and most people just looked at it and went, really? This is very uncomfortable. Especially when he's walking by the benches and he's just going, oh, hi. The neighborhood behind him is not a middle-class neighborhood. I would like to afford one of those houses. Alas, we all know my job situation, and we certainly know your job situations. You're still in school. I'm just out of school. We can't afford those places. They're like $1 million homes, or pretty close to it. He's got the whole dad jeans thing going on. He's supposed to look like your dad, but we don't know what's happening with his wardrobe. It's not good. And frankly, the reason that I stopped it on this pane here is because there's kids in the background, but none of them are his. Stranger danger in the ultimate sense of the word. There's a single white dude walking through a park, and the last thing we see is his name splattered on children. Not his children. It's weird. It's awkward. It's not good. Now, this clip was so well intentioned. You can bring all of these things in, and it tries to communicate a specific set of ideas. It really does. I laid some of them out here after the video. It fails because all of those ideas are totally tone deaf to the wider conversation. So this really goes into the fact that, like, if you're writing your paper and you bring in a video clip or you bring in a meme, it has to fit with the rest of the paper. It has to do something for you. This here was trying to do something, but it was totally incommensurate with, it didn't jive with the rest of the public narrative that was going on, and that's where they fell apart. It also looks like a high school, grade 9, grade 10 election video. It's like, vote for me. We're trying to save money because we don't have any, so therefore we produced this clip where I'm walking around in a park. If it's going to be a visual, it has to be a good visual. All right? It has to do something that the writing can't.